I enjoy professional wrestling, right? I love the business of the business. As I said in one of my other podcasts, I listen to, I'm a brand member. Vince Russo's the brand. I listen to Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff and, on the Conrad Thompson Network, So, yeah, I really like the business. In its state right now, do I think it's worth $2 billion? I would say probably not. Ooh, yeah, dig it. You're talking to Carl Gray, the world champion of business launch with Carl. Thinking. I'm sorry, I had to do it. I've always wanted to, but you see, I got the belt. I'm a mark for myself. I am. Gotta be sometimes. If you ain't gonna be your own fan, who will be? But look, so as someone who loves business, right? I love business. I also love professional wrestling. Right? I've watched it since I was a child. My dad would be like, "Don't watch that fake stuff." He knew how to punish me. Don't let me watch wrestling. My father was literally locked up, right? And in Lord Penitentiary, and I did something wrong. And my mother put me on the phone with him, and he was like, "So your punishment is you can't watch wrestling for 2 weeks." I was upset. Of course, I listened. Mind you, he's miles away. He can't get to me, but I listened to him. That's neither here nor there, right? But all I have to say is I enjoy professional wrestling, right? I love the business of the business. As I said in one of my other podcasts, I listen to, I'm a brand member. Vince Russo's the brand. I listen to Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff and, on the Conrad Thompson Network, So, yeah, I really like the business. But recently I heard something that was wild. And I was like, let me think about this. I was listening to Castrated Remarks on Vince Russo, the brand. And they talked about, there was an article that came out in Forbes, or somebody from Forbes. I don't know if it was an article. I could not find the exact article, but there were a lot of people that were talking about it that said AEW would go for $2 billion, right? And they got into the discussion like, there's no way it will go for $2 billion, because I don't know if any of y'all ever watched AEW, but let's just say it's not the wrestling we were ever used to. It's really meant for a very, very small niche group of people who, and I'm not gonna get into, why they think how they think, but yeah, I just say this: it does not appeal to the normal person, the normal fan, like those of us who like the Attitude Era when wrestling was at its heyday, when everybody watched it or everybody knew about it and stuff like that with The Rock and Stone Cold and all that. But so it's really caters to them, I went to the very first show, and I'll be honest, it was it's not very watchable, in my opinion, for somebody who's not like somebody who cares a whole lot about the names of the moves and athleticism. I really like storytelling, like really good storytelling that's relatable to normal people. But so when they were talking like, there's no way, with WWE just selling for over $9 billion, that anybody would pay, $1 to $2 billion for AEW. And so I had to sit back and think, and I'm in business, so I know people who are in mergers and acquisitions. And so, I kind of asked the question, what goes into a merger and acquisition? Because, in my mind, I automatically agreed. It was like, hey, there's no way. Why would somebody pay $2 billion for it? But you got to think about it. People don't buy businesses, to keep them the way that they are. They buy them to improve them, and they, buy them based upon potential that is there. And so I started to look at, the business in and of itself, and of AEW, which is ran by Tony Khan, who, seems to be an extreme fan of wrestling. Like, he loves what he does. No knock on that, but it kind of seems like this is more of a hobby to him than a business. And the reason that I say that is because he does not seem to be growth focused when it comes to the fan base, on television and making sure that more people desire to watch it. Like he really feels like he just wants to hyper serve the audience that he has. So, in its state right now, do I think it's worth $2 billion? I would say probably not, based upon what I know about business. And I am not a mergers and acquisition expert, but it is something that I'm interested in. I did talk to some people who are in that. And so these are things they said. So the first thing we got to look at is the assets of the company. So, obviously it has, intellectual property that's there. They, of course, they have the ring equipment, camera equipment, all of that good stuff. So he's invested a lot just in that. Then also the contracts of the wrestlers themselves, that's worth something there. So there are a number of wrestlers there that are pretty popular amongst their fan base and probably have potential to expand under the right leadership. And then also they have, they have a pretty global reach. Like they just did, a show over in England that where, I think it's reported anywhere from like 70 to 80,000 tickets sold or people in attendance or something of that nature. And there's some controversy behind that, but whatever it was a great number. So there's obviously that their live events, special event things, they're able to get a lot of people there, get some buzz. Not to mention they have the backing of a billionaire. The backing of a billionaire is nothing to sneeze at, right? And then then there's the advantage of live entertainment. Weekly live episodic entertainment is at a premium. When things go live, especially in prime time, there's a premium that's put on top of that, which also would increase the worth of it. So on a cable network, a couple of cable networks, and then have a relationship, with one of the largest, entertainment companies out there, Warner Brothers Discovery. And so all of that is taken into consideration. But I think the biggest thing that would make it worth that amount is the fact that somebody coming in to take over, if they were to buy it, they would change everything as far as how it's put together. Like, for instance, chances are Tony Khan would no longer be booking. He would no longer be the one making decisions on what goes on in the ring. The person who comes in would be very growth focused, focused on growing the audience, trying to relive the heyday of the late 90s, early 2000s, when wrestling was at its peak. And that's been 20 years since that's happened. And, the fact that, the outcomes are predetermined is something that can be used to the advantage in order to bring more eyes, make it water cooler talk again, make people really talking about it in a way where folks take it seriously. And so, like, that's what I really want to focus on, is what would make it worth that money. So, again, I know a bit about the business, not a whole lot, but I do know some of the people who are backstage. Like, you have one of the greatest talent relations people probably the greatest talent relations person in the history of wrestling, Jim Ross. Everybody knew him as the announcer during the Attitude Era, but he's also the one who managed the talent. He did the recruiting, made sure they got paid, kept people happy backstage. Nobody has managed a locker room from what I've heard. And I do know some people in the business, and nobody has ever managed a locker room better than Jim Ross has, and they have him backstage. You have Arn Anderson, who is somebody who knows how to, make matches work the right way. Jake the Snake Roberts, who, one of the greatest promos, talkers ever. So, you start to look at those pieces that they have, and it's like, hey, somebody who has a growth mindset would say, hey, let's utilize these people who have a history of success, a history of drawing, big numbers and doing great things. I mean, the founder of the Four Horsemen, let's be serious, like they have those people that, Jeff Jarrett, who, I mean, JARREWT, people remember that type of stuff, characters that are on it, Billy Gunn, everybody knows Billy Gunn from DX. So, when you start to see that some of the pieces can be moved around, rearranged, and taken advantage of, as opposed to only focusing on, the people who may not have the same amount of knowledge, industry knowledge, and things of that nature. Like, there's some silos of knowledge that could be, pulled out and bloom to make it worth even more. Then you look at the fact that, like we said before, they have a TV time in prime time, right? which, you start to change some of the storylines, making it, I mean, think about when we watched, wrestling and we really liked it and loved it. Everybody cared about the storyline. You start to say, hey, if we start, switch from, seeing how many times somebody can do a flip or cartwheel in the ring or land on the table or do the exact same moves every single match, and then start focus on how stories can be told, creating cliffhangers, making people want to watch, make it more must-see television. And this could be done, actually this could be improved in both companies. But I'm really talking about this one in particular because we're talking about what would get it to a $2 billion valuation. Because again, there are so many things that it has potentially that could work better. You start telling these storylines. And then, as I said before, and I put this out there, and I know people are laughing at me, be like, yo, this will never happen. And I know I'm probably Vince will be like, Carl, I don't know why you said that. It'll never happen. Eric, if he ever watches this, he'll be like, there's no way this will ever happen. But those two minds coming together, even Jim Cornette, like, you're a wild dude, but the man got a mind. And these people, but in particular, I'm talking about Vince and Eric, people who know what work, folks from that school, from that era, that know what draws the masses. And that's what we're talking about, because professional wrestling, I believe, still has the ability to draw the masses. I know when AEW was coming out, there were people who were, people call them lapsed fans, former fans or whatever, who were looking forward to it coming because they felt like this will be a return. This will be an opportunity to watch, more entertaining wrestling, what we were used to, not necessarily some of the risque stuff that happened, but just the fact that storylines are being told that were enjoyable. The same way, many of these shows that we watch get all these viewers. I'm a Game of Thrones. Some people watch Game of Thrones. Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, all of those. They made it because of storyline. And AEW has the potential. So if I'm looking to buy something and thinking that a turnaround would net me, $2 billion over time, I would definitely say that it could be worth that on the open market. Now, would somebody be paying a premium for it? Yes. But I think that with the right leadership, the right business model that will be more growth focused as opposed to fan focused, which there's a difference. Growing the fan base, to include, young people, to include women, to include, men who, have a desire to see, wrestling. It's something about, the competition, the machismo piece of it that we really like, those of us who are masculine men, like I like this type of stuff, as opposed to it being catered to a niche audience who, wants to know what goes on backstage. Yes, I do believe that AEW could be worth $2 billion on the open market. It will be a premium price, but yeah, they already have the assets. They have the television time. They have the relationship with the network. It's already been stated that, the TV rights deal themselves could be worth close to $1 billion. They have great personnel backstage. I mean, just putting Jim Ross in position would probably make things go so much better. And then like you say, Arn Anderson and Jake Roberts, and most of them would never, say that because, hey, Tony's paying good money right now. There'd also probably be some pay cuts that go on there, streamlining of assets and things of that nature. Then taking advantage of the global reach that it has, and even putting itself in a position where it could actually compete with the WWE, because part of what made the valuation, where WWE could go public, 20 years ago, was the fact that it had spent so much time in competition, which made it step its game up. Right now WWE has no competition. AEW could be the competition for it, but it really isn't. It's an alternative, not a competitor. Like people aren't, like well, I ain't got getting all that because that's a whole nother, thing. But all that to say, wow, talking in circles at this point, do I believe that AEW could be worth $2 billion to somebody out there? My answer is a resounding yes. This has been Friends with Businesses podcast, the no paper, no ink, just what I think episode. Hey, please like, subscribe, go to friendswithbusinesses.net. To subscribe. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that great stuff. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Would you pay $2 billion for AEW? What do you think about what I said? Hey, if you agree with me, disagree with me, let's talk about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll let you later. Peace.